Okay, what we want to take a look at now is getting our member from the cache rather than loading it from the API every time. And if we take a look at what we're doing inside our member service now, well, we no longer have a simple array of members to work with. Our member would be in there somewhere, of course, because if we've downloaded the members from the API, then we have access to our member. And at the moment, there's a couple of different options for this, but later on, it becomes more difficult. For reasons I won't go into now, but what we could do is what we've seen before. When we looked at the errors and we wanted to pass something to a route that we were going to, what we did was we used navigation extras and that got us the details of the member. That would work right now, but it won't work later on. So we're not going to use navigation extras for this. We've already seen navigation extras anyway. So you could just go ahead and implement that if you wanted. What I'm going to demonstrate is an alternative way of how we can get something from that JavaScript map. And what we need is to, let's take a look. What have we got at the moment? Well, let's get rid of this code. We're not using it at the moment anyway because there are no members in the members array. In fact, do we even have members still in here? We do. That's why we're not getting an error. So what we'll do is we'll remove this code. It's worth nothing to us now. And how do we go about the business of finding an individual member inside this? Now we know it's definitely in there, but what we also know is that our member cache, in fact, let's just log out the member cache. Let's go and take a look at what we are working with. Now we'll add a console.log and we'll say list.memberCache. And if we go to our browser and let's open up the console and take a look at the console, then our map is empty. If we go to the matches and then we go back to that user, now we've got our map which contains our paginated result, and inside here we have our result, which is our 5 users that we've now stored in memory. And we know Lisa is inside here. This is Lisa's member. So the object is there for us to get. And we just need to go and fish it out of what we see here. Okay, so what can we use to help us? So first of all, what we want to do is get all of the values of the member cache. We don't need the keys now, we just need the values. And we know that our users are stored in the values of that. So what we'll do, we'll say const member equals. And then what we'll use is a spread operator. And we're going to say this dot member or member cache dot values. And what we'll do is we'll just console.log the member to see what we have at this moment in time. And if we do what we did before, we'll just go back to the matches and then we'll click on Lisa's profile again. And this time what we've got is a paginated result and a result of 5 members. Okay, but what if we had another query in our memory? And if we go and take a look and we say 60 for the age, then we've got 2 users inside here. And if I click on one of these users, then what we have now is 2 arrays inside here. We've got our paginated result and paginated result. Aha, okay. And then each one of these contains an array with a result of our users. So what we really need is a single array that we can use to find a particular user, just like we had before. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to introduce you to, if you haven't seen it before, one of the more complicated methods that we can use on an array. And this slightly more complicated method is called the reduce method. And what we use this for is to reduce our array into something else. We don't want an array of arrays with paginated objects and other things inside it. We just want the results. We want the results of each array in a single array that we can then search and find the first member that matches a condition. And we can use this reduce function to achieve that. So what we do here is we call a specified callback function. So we give this a function, a callback function, for all of the elements in an array. And the return value of the callback function is the accumulated result and is provided as an argument in the next call to the callback function. And it accepts up to 4 arguments and the reduce method calls the callback function one time for each element in the array. Now, this can sound horrendously complicated the first time you use it, but it's not that bad. So what we'll do is we'll make use of it and see what we get. So first thing we need to do is say reduce, and we need to give this a callback function. We've used these plenty of times. A callback function looks like this. This is how we start any function. And then we say what we want to do to each array element we have. Now, when we looked at the console, we saw that we had two arrays, and they were both paginated result arrays. So what we're going to do is we've got access to a previous value here, and then we've got access to a current value. So what we're going to do is say that our previous value is just an array. We're going to say ARR for the array. And then we have our current value, and we apply this callback function to each element in the array. So I'm going to call this one LM for element. So we've got our previous value, which is the array, and we've got our element. And what we can also do is give our reduce function an initial value. And if we take a look at this, we can give this an initial value, and if an initial value is specified, it is used as the initial value to start the accumulation. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a method on the array, the previous value. And what we want to do is concatenate the arrays together. So what we can use is array concat, and then we can pass in the element.results, because our members were contained inside the results of that array. And then what we do is we give our reduce function an initial value, which is just an empty array. So as we call this function on each element in the array, we're going to get the result, which contains 5 members, 2 members, 4 members, however many are in our cache. And then we're going to concatenate that onto the array that we have, which starts with nothing. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at what we get from this. So I'm just going to console.log the member again. And we'll go back and we'll do what we did before. We'll go back to our matches. And what we'll do is we'll make sure we've got 2 lots of users inside there. So I'm just going to apply the filters, and then I'm going to click on one of the users. Now what we've got is an array containing 10 users. Now it's possible our users could be duplicated in this array, because if I go back to the matches again, and let's say I just want to get 18 to 64-year-olds, or in this example, just to be very clear, I'm going to say 63 to 64-year-olds. I'm going to apply filters, and if we go to, in fact, let's clear the console, and let's go to Lisa again. Now we've got 12 in our list, and we've got 2 Lisas because they're for 2 different queries. We've got a Lisa that's stored in our age filter that we used, and we've also got Lisa that's stored in our array of 5 users that didn't use the filter. But that's fine, because we're going to use a method that's going to find the first element in an array that matches the name that we're looking for. So now we've got our users flattened into an array, our task is significantly easier. All we need to do now is we'll come back up to this method, and then what we can do is say use the find method, and what we'll do is we'll say x goes to x.username. In fact, let's be very clear whilst I'm using these methods actually. This is going to be a member. What we're looking for here is a member, and it's going to be of type member. So I need to put this in parentheses. So I'm going to say member of type member, because that's what's in our array. And then what we're going to do is say that our member.username is equal to the username that we have inside our parameters. And then what we can do is do what we did before basically. We're going to check to see if we have a member. And if we do, we're going to return of and then pass in a member. And our find method is going to look for the first instance of this and return this to us. So in theory, what we should be able to do now is go back and take a look. So I'll click on matches. Obviously, we're going to load. If I click on Lewis, instant. If I go back to our matches, click on Margot, we're getting it from memory now. We're getting it from our cache because now it's contained inside there. If I click on males and apply filters and then click on one of these users, then great, everything's fine, and we can go back to our males again and then go back to Margot, and then click on our matches, and then if I go to mails, and then I apply filters, and then I go to list user, great, it's all instant. But if I go back to our matches, we might have want to retain our filter, but we're losing it every time. And that's because we're storing our user params inside our component. We lose them every time. And we have a solution for this. We can store that in our service as well. And we'll take a look at that next.